old you get pernickety.
Which house, yo? Be specific.
The Brooklyn house, we had a flood like a month ago. So they ripped out like a lot of things and the dust never went away. It's still working actually. Yeah. And the guys, the mold removal guy said we're incredibly quick that we got things fixed right away. He says most people like wait to see how much money they have and then they decide how much construction they could do and they do extra stuff based on how much money they make. I just want it to be done with. Okay. Well, good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shlema Peilan Chaya Baserach. We're on Daf Samachay Amid Aleph by the Mishnah. We're talking about the mitzvahs of the Mincha Sa'imer. Ketzad Hey Noisen. So how did they bring the Mincha of the Aimer? Shluchei Bezdin Yoitzim Erev Yom Tov. The Shluchei Bezdin would go out on Erev Yom Tov, Oisen Oisei Krichas, and they would make bundles of the barley. They would go take a bunch of barley stalks and bundle them together, as they Rashi says, b'mechuber. The Gemara says b'mechuber l'karka while they're attached to make it ready to go. Kadesh Yenoich Litzar, in order that it should be quick. Call they would prepare. Kol ha'yaros hasmuchas l'sham miskans l'sham. All the people from the nearby cities would come gather for the festival, for the occasion. Kadesh Yenichsa be'esa gadol, in order that it should be a big occasion when they did it. As we're going to see, this is all because of the Baisusim that we discussed yesterday. Kivan Shechshicha, when it became night, right? As you know, we count Sfiras HaOmer at night, right? On the second night of Pesach. And that's when they would cut the Omer. So Omer Lahen Ba Shemesh, they would say it's already nightfall. Omer Hin. Ba Shemesh Omer Hin. They would say, is it night? They'd say yes. They'd say, is it night? They'd say yes. Magal Zu, should we use this scythe to cut the barley? Hin. They'd say, Omer Hin. They'd say yes. Magal Zu, Omer Hin. Kupazu, should we use this basket? Omer Hin. Kupazu, Omer Hin. B'Shabbos, Omer Lahen. Shabbazu. When it was Shabbos, they'd say, should we do it even though it's Shabbos? Omer Hin. They'd say yes. Shabbazu, Omer Hin. They'd say yes. And that means this is to make they would make like a whole refrain. The people doing the work would ask all the people gathered. They make a whole answering back uh, thing out of it, ceremony. Amalahen Ektsar, should we go ahead and cut it? Ektsar, Shalish Pamim. They do it each one they do three times. Even though we just said twice, it really means to say that they would repeat themselves three times. Al kol dav v'dav, on each one of the things we mentioned. V'hein oimrim lehin hin hin. And the people would say, yes, yes, you're doing the right thing. Kol kach lama, what was this all for? Neha baisusim. This is because of the baisusim. Show you oimrim, ein ketziris oimrim b'moitzah yamtiv. They said, b'machras hashabbos tisberu chamishim yom. Where is it? It's it says Tishbru Chamishim b'Machos HaShabbos. They say Machos HaShabbos means the day after Shabbos, which means Sunday. The Baisusim said you wait till the first Sunday after Shabbos, on Yom Tov. Whenever Yom Tov starts, you wait till Shabbos comes over Yom Tov, and that Sunday is when you cut the barley for the Omer. But as we know, we don't paskin like that. We understand Machras HaShabbos, in this case, Shabbos over here means the first day of Yom Tov, and Machras HaShabbos means at that night, right after the first day of Yom Tov, that's when you cut the Omer. That's why they made this whole ceremony, so people should realize not like the Baisus. Taner Rabban, Alin Yuma the Loyla Isana behind, Umiksasan Loyla Mitzvah behind. These are days that Brisa says that days that it's a Yom Tov and you're not allowed to fast on them, and some of them are so chamer that you're not even allowed to do a hesped. Reish Yarcha de Nisan ad Tamnebe, from the first day of Nisan until the eighth day of Nisan, itoikim tmida. That's when the tinus on the way the Talmud was brought were resolved. That means there was a machlokes about the proper way to bring the Talmud, and since they fought about it, this is when the resolution came, and therefore we make those days into a Yom Tov, a semi Yom Tov that you're not allowed to fast on them, or say a Hesed. Deloy lemispid, and these are the Chamadik, a real Yom Tov that you can't even make a Hesped on it. From the 8th day of Nisan until the end of Yom Tov, Itoisav Chaga de Shvuah. That's when we resolved when Shavuos is going to come out. So this is going to be coming back to our discussion of which day you start the Eimer, which day you cut the Eimer, which is when you count 50 days from them. The loyal misbit. Meresh Yarcha de Nisan Atamni Bei Itaikim Tmida, the misbit the loyal misbit Meresh Yarcha de Nisan Atamni Bei Itaikim Tmida, the loyal misbit, Shahayut Stukim Aimrim. What was this first thing that we said? That you can't fast or do a hesped for the first 8 days of Nisan. They said a yachid can decide to bring a tamid on his own. It's not just the 2 tmidim of every day brought by the tzibor, but a yachid called to do. So my droish, where do they get this from? The Torah says the lashon, the mitzvah bring the tamid. It says it in a lashon yachid. Tasa is a lashon yachid. That's mashma and the yachid. Maya Hadru, what was the answer to this? As Karbani Lachbi Leishai, Tishmeru Sheyu Tishmeru, that the Pasuk says, as Karbani Lachbi Leishai, that's a Lashon Rabbim. Shukulam Boy Mitrumas Halishka. That tells you that it all comes from the Trumas Halishka. It's not coming from a Yachid. So that tells you that that the Talmud has to be from the Tzibur, not from a Yachid. So that's the explanation for the first 8 days of Pesach. And as you know, to this day, we don't say Tachnan on the first 8 days, as well as we don't say Tachnan for the whole Nisan. The first 8 days is like we just described because of the answering of the Sedukim on the Talmud. The next 8 days was because we answered the Baisusim about when we start the Eimer and therefore when Shavuos is going to come out. So it comes out the first 14 days are covered, and then you have till after Yom Tov, you don't make say Tachnan Yom Tov, so you have already 21 days. So since it's Roiv of the month, therefore we don't say Tachnan the whole month of Nisan. Zok the Gemara. So what about the second part? What is this that we don't make a tinus or a hesped on the second group of days from the 8th day of Nisan till after Yom Tov? Itais of Chag of the Shavuot. That's when the Chag of Shavuos was the machlokes about when Shavuos was concluded. The loyal mitzvah that we don't make a hesped. She by susim aimrim atzeres achar Shabbos achar Shabbos. They say that Shavuos always comes out on Sunday because they say you start counting the 50 days from Menachos to Shabbos. Menachos to Shabbos is Sunday. The first Sunday that comes out on Yom Tov, and then you count 50 days from that. So Shavuos will also always come out on Sunday. Nitva lahan Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came across the Baisusim. V'amalhem shaitim, said, you idiots, minayin lechem. Where do you get this from? Who told you this? No one had an answer. Meaning that, everyone makes believe that they're big intellectuals and they have it all figured out. But the reality is they were just doing it because someone else told them. No one really knew the basis for why they were doing it. There was one Zaken who was fighting with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He argued with him. Moshe Rabbeinu loved the Yidden. And he knew that Shavuos is one day. He put Shavuos He made the Aimer on the Ksiras Aimer and the Sviras Aimer starting on the day on Sunday after Shabbos, so that Shavuos will come out after Shabbos. You'll have a 2 day Yom Tov. You'll have 2 days to enjoy. Which is, if you ever get into a discussion with an Israeli and discussing the relative merits of a 1 day Yom Tov or a 2 day Yom Tov, you could bring up this Gemara because Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai did not argue that it's a milah to have 2 days of Yom Tov. 3 day Yom Tov he didn't get into. But l'chayr it's even better, a 3 day Yom Tov. Karlov Mikrazeh. So he said, so Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai answered this by Susi. It takes 11 days to go from Har Sinai to Har Seir to get into Eretz Yisrael. So it really just takes 11 days. If Moshe Rabbeinu loved the Yidden, Lama Icharam b'Midbar Arbaim Shana, why did he take 40 years when it could have just taken 11 days? So Vaistais Moshe Rabbeinu did not love the Yidden. Obviously, this was the Reshtus, but he was answering to the Baisusim. When you argue, you have to argue in the language that they understand. He just was pointing out the absurdity of what he said. Because we don't paskin like that. There's no such thing to paskin based on Moshe Rabbeinu's Ayev Yisrael, and therefore that's what the vice says. They didn't think Torah was Misinai. They thought the Moshe Rabbeinu was making up the Torah. So he said, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't love the Yidden so much. Amalai Rabbi Bekachat Patrani. So he said to him, Rabbi, that's a good argument. He said to Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai. Amalei Shaita. He said, you idiot. You think that our Torah is not better than your Sicha Betulin, Sicha Betelin? Meaning we have real proofs. I can back everything up. I'm just answering you in your language. You said a davar shel stus, so I showed even in your davar shel stus you're not consistent. But certainly there is a pshat. Chasav Echad Aimer. So the first raya is it says Tisbru Chamishim Yoim. Chasav Echad Aimer Shabbos Shabbos Tmimas Tiyana. On the one hand, we say you have to count 50 days, and in another place we say you have to count 7 whole weeks. HaKetzad. Now, Shabbos is Tmimus means that you count a full week, means Sunday to Sunday. Kan Yom Tov Shechali is b'Shabbos. So when Yom Tov comes out on Shabbos, so then you count from Sunday to Sunday, and Shavuos comes out on Sunday, so then you have 7 full weeks. Kan Yom Tov Shechali is b'Emtza Shabbos. But if Yom Tov comes out in the middle of the week, then you count 50 days. You don't have 7 full weeks. So that's a raya, obviously, that Yom Tov can't that the Sfiras of the Aimer and the Ksiras Aimer and the Minchas Aimer can be during the week. Then we have 2 brises that each bring a number of tirutzim on this question of how do we know that the answer to the Baisusim, how do we know that Svira starts on whatever day is the second day of Yom Tov and not on the Sunday. It's not necessary the teretz that Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai said. Torah says tispaloch, you should count it. It's up to Bezdin to determine when the Svira Shem Yoidim l'chadish, that they know when to make the chaydish and therefore which day is Yom Tov. Machras HaShabbos, Machras Yom Tov. It says Machos Shabbos, that means Machos Yom Tov, the next day after Yom Tov. Yotzah Shabbos Breishis says Shvirasa B'chol Adam. So that excludes, it can't mean Sunday, because Sunday you don't need Bezdin to tell you when Chaydish is, and therefore when the first day of Pesach is, and the second day is going to be the Sfira. If we're just Sunday, everyone knows which day of the week it is. You just have to see which day is Sunday. Rabbi Yeshua Aimer, Amr Torah, Mana Yamim v'Kiddush Chodesh. Mana Yam v'Kiddush Atzeres. The Torah makes a sort of a tzustel between counting the days of each month to get to the end of the month of when you're going to be Mechadish Levana and start the next month. You count 29 days, and then the 30th day or the 31st, one of those two is going to be the next month. So you count days, and you also have a Svira to get to Shavuos. Ma Chodesh Shamach L'Biyasei Nikar. Just like when it comes to the month, when it's getting close to when it's going to be the new month, you can count and you know which day it is. So too, when it comes to Shavuos, when it gets close to the day that you can start, you know which way to count is also you can tell it because it's based on which day of the month it is. While if it was based on Shabbos, you don't know which day. You can't put on your calendar that the 16th day of the Eimer is when you count the Eimer because it's going to depend when Shabbos is, so it's not going to be so nick. If it would be always after Shabbos, it's not going to be known. It's not going to be easy calculable when that day is going to be. He says before we just said that we can compare. I'm sorry. The Torah says you should bring the Eimer on Pesach on the first, right? This is what we're talking about. You bring the Eimer on the second day of Pesach, and that's when you can start eating the barley in the field, the Chadash. Ushtei Alechem Batzaras, that's when you could start bringing the Chadash on the Mizbeach. Mala Lon Regel Utchilas Regel, just like the Shtei Halechem is at the beginning of Yom Tov, it's on Shavuos. Avkan Regel Utchilas Regel. So to the Eimer is also at the beginning of Yom Tov of Pesach. And if it would be on Shabbos, it could be toward the end of Pesach. He says rather than just saying because it says you bring a Eimer and the Shtei Alechem that are both matter different things. He says it's a mamash gzeir shava. It says the word Shabbos legabi it calls Shavuos Shabbos and it calls Pesach Shabbos. Malalan regel utchlis regel samachla afkan regel utchlis regel samachla. So both of them, the requirement to bring the Eimer as well as to bring just like the Shtei Alechem is at the beginning of Shavuos. Now Shavuos really is only one day, but the Chachamim gave another. Rashi says they gave another 7 days that you could bring the carbon if you missed that day. But you do the bringing of the Shtei Alechem is always on Shavuos. So too, the Eimer is also at the beginning of Pesach on the second day of Pesach. Tanu Rabban. That's the first brisa, which brought a bunch of different rayas to this proposition of when we do the Ksiras Eimer and when you start the Sfiras Eimer. Tanu Rabban. Svatim lechem. Shtei Sfira lechol echad ve'echad. Every person has an individual requirement of Sfira. It's not something that Bezdin does or the Tzibur does. Every person has to do Sfira. Mimachras HaShabbos, the Brisa continues, Mimachras HaShabbos, Mimachras Yom Tov. It means on the second day of Yom Tov. Maybe it means on Sunday. Basically, the Torah says you count 50 days. The counting that you should do should always be 50 days. And if you say it goes by Sunday, it could be as many as 56 days. Now, what does that mean? It's always 50 days from whenever that Sunday is till Shavuos, right? He's going to say Shavuos is 50 days after that. So let's see Rashi. If Pesach comes out on Shabbos, both the Baisusim and we would agree that Shavuos is going to be 50 days later. Should always count only 50 days from the second day of Pesach. He says that since in the previous year, if Pesach came out on the second day, if Pesach came out, on Shabbos, so you counted from Sunday, and it was 50 days later that was Shavuos. The next year, the calculation is going to be very different. It could be depending on when Sunday comes out, according to Baisusim, it could be rather than 50 days as compared to the previous year, it could be 51 or 52. So we're really comparing to a baseline of that. We're just giving an example that if Pesach came out on Shabbos, then it could be from one year, it could be 50 days after that day, and then the next year it could be 56 days after. That's not necessary to say this. This is the same teretz like we had before, that it's Tully and Bezdin. Yatza Shabbos Bereishis Sfirasa B'chol Adam. That excludes Shabbos of that Sunday, that anyone can determine it. That's the same teretz as we said before. Rabbi Yosi Omer, Menachos Shabbos, Menachos Yom Tov, Ata Omer Menachos Yom Tov, Ve'en El Menachos Shabbos Bereishis. I'm sorry. Amrit, B'chinema Menachos Shabbos.
Sorry.
B'chinema Menachos Shabbos Shebeteicha Pesach, V'chinema El Menachos Shabbos T'chol Hashana Kula. Malay Shabbos. Say Abedek, it's a Shabbos. If you're going to say that it means Stam Shabbos, how do we know which Shabbos it's talking about? It said, the Torah says, you should start counting on the day after Menachos Shabbos. If you say it means the regular Shabbos, there's no indication which Shabbos you're talking about. Now, we've been assuming until now, which is the Vaisusim held, it meant the
Raval, you can hear anything?
No, I don't hear anything. Sorry, I was on
Yeah,
mute.
same. Yeah, and I saw you talking. I was trying to point to my ear. Yeah, I can't hear anything either. It must be. I was all excited. I thought we were gonna catch up, maybe a full daf.
Yeah, sorry. Our my laptop just died for some reason. Just rebooted out of nowhere. No warning at all. Anyone? Let's give him a minute to rejoin, hopefully. Okay. So he said that if we're talking about Sunday, it's not. There's no way to determine which Sunday we're talking about. V'ayid Nemra Shabbos Lamata. He says another territory. He says V'ayid Nemra Shabbos Lamata v'Nemra Shabbos Lamayla Ma'alor Regel Tchilas Regel Avkan Regel Tchilas Regel. Like as we said in the first price as well, that since we compare Shavuos to Pesach, the svira of the shtei lechem that's brought on Shavuos to the Aimer that's brought on Pesach, just like on Shavuos, it's the beginning of Yom Tov, so too over here, it's the beginning of Yom. Shimon Elazar Aimer, Kasav Achar Sheish Yom Teichel Matzos, Kasav Achar Aimer, Shivas Yom Matzos Teichelu. The Torah says you should eat matzah on Pesach for 6 days, and one pasuk says you eat it for 7 days. Haketzad matzah sheyatu yachal oichla shiva min achadash ata yachal oichla shisha min achadash. Even though that matzah can't be eaten, that you can't eat it all 7 days, because if it's chadash, you're not allowed to eat it prior to the Eimer, but you could eat it for the 6 days. But after the first day, when you bring the Eimer, then you're allowed to start eating the matzah. So that's only if Chodesh is if Chodesh is mutter starting on the second day of Pesach. But if you hold like the Beisusim, it could be on the last day of Pesach, depending on when Sunday comes out. Now the Gemara continues, so that's the end for now of this listing of the Terutzim. Now the Gemara is saying that we're talking about the dinim of Sfira. From the day that you bring the Eimer, you start counting. Maybe you can cut the Eimer and you bring it. But how do we know you start counting on the same day? Maybe you do the Ksiris Eimer and then you bring the Minchas Eimer, but you could start counting the 50 days a week later, and you can make sure whenever you want. From the time that you start cutting, that the sky cuts the standing grain, that's when you start counting, which is you have to cut it on the second day of Yom. So if it's saying from when you cut the grain, that's when you count. But maybe you cut the barley for the Omer and you start counting, you start the mitzvah sphere. But then you could actually bring the Minchas Omer, the carbon, you could bring it a week later. From the day that you bring it, that's when you count. So the counting has to be the same day you bring it. So it says you bring it by day. Maybe you should cut the barley and you should do start svira and bring the carbon mincha all by day. But we know we cut the barley right after nightfall, and you count right away. We count by the seder at night. Torah says he should do 7 full weeks. When do you have 7 full weeks? That's when you start counting from the previous night. Maybe you should do everything by night. You should also do the bringing of the Eimer at night. You have to bring it by day. Rava said, we brought a whole bunch of brises, and they all have terutzim. So we brought 2 brises, but the last 2 terutzim in each brisa that we don't have there's no kashas on them, but the other ones we have a brisa that we have a teretz on them. Even the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, if you say the teretz of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that it says you should count Sheva, it says you count Sheva Shabbos is Tmimas, you should count 7 full weeks. And it also says you should count days. And he said that means that if it comes out on Sunday, then you count 7 weeks. And if it comes out on the other day, you count the 50 days. So maybe he says, maybe that's coming to tell you a different din. This is as we're familiar with. There's both a mitzvah to do svira based on the day. You do count what day, and then there's another mitzvah to count how many weeks it is into the svira. That's what we do. That's why we do both. So it's not that which the Torah says you should count weeks and count days is not to tell you a full week when it's Shabbos, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said. Either Rabbi Elazar or Rabbi Yeshua, and if it's coming from Rabbi Elazar and Yeshua, who said that the Torah says it has to be, Rabbi Elazar said it has to come from when Bezdin was geyser, when Yom Tov starts, and that's only because Bezdin. So only Pesach is dependent on what Bezdin starts the Chodesh, but Shabbos is not. It's not identifiable. And Rabbi Yeshua says that it has to be a day that you can count. That it has to be so Mimai to be Yom Tov Rishon Kai, Dilma be Yom Tov Achron Kai. But it still doesn't. Neither of those, both of those, you could answer. Maybe it's not the first. Maybe it's not the second day of Yom Tov, but maybe it's the last day of Yom Tov. Okay, I mean, even though it's a little hard to understand because by Susim said B'dafka on Sunday. The Bishmal Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira less luper. The answer of Bishmal Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira in the first brisa, we don't have an answer. Either Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and if from the Torah, the the kasha of Rav Yossi bar Yehuda, that he said that it has to always be 50 days, and therefore it can't be that it starts, if we count from when it was in the previous year, it could sometimes be anywhere from 51 to 56 days. So the Gemara Shisa says like the question that we discussed. You should count from the previous years. It's always going to be 50 days from whenever this year's Aymer starts. So even if it's always Sunday, it could start at a different time than last year, but it's still 50 days. Here, Yehuda ben Beseira, Madianta Rishon Kaidom Miyantav Achron Kai, like we said in the first price. So Yesinami Chazale and Rabbi Yossi Nami Chazile Percha. Rabbi Yossi also gave two terutzim because he agreed with this kasha, which was similar to the kasha we asked in the first price. So behind the Kamavoid, that's what he said in other texts. Gufa Amar Abai, mitzvah lemimni yoimi, mitzvah lemimni mishui. It's a mitzvah to count days and a mitzvah to count weeks of the Sfira Rabbanan, the Bei Rabashi, Manu Yumi and Manu Shua. They taka paskin like we do, that you have to count both days and weeks when you do Sfira Simon. Ameima Manu Yumi, Eloi Manu Shui. He did not count weeks. Amar Zeichel Mikdashu. He says the whole Sfira that we do now, when there's no Aimer, is only a Zeicher. So therefore, there's no need to also do weeks. Shkayach, have a great day, and Bez Hashem, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And I guess you'll let us know if it's on Zoom or in person, please.
Yes, I'll let you know.
Ashkach.
I'm not sure.
Go.